Well, speaking of that tall order and the monetary system and the economy, it is a hard challenge and hard enough for anyone, but let alone a new president. What should we expect?
Well, I think so far you've sort of laid the groundwork for what they're going to be doing. You're looking at a bailout, but not the kind of bailout that we saw with Wall Street. You might see something more with a long-term and a short-term goal. A short-term goal might be something like doing another kind of tax rebate or some kind of tax cut of some sort. But then I think you're going to see some long-term things, the investment in the infrastructure. I think the model is maybe going to be a 21st century version of the New Deal. So let's call it New Deal version 2.0.
Or 3, because the second New Deal was 1935.
There you go. There you go. So I think that's the way that the direction is going. Thankfully, we've got a large economy, and a large economy can carry the burden of a huge debt and the huge amount of government outlay that this is going to cost. And if it's done in the right places, if it's not just a check given to people and expecting them to go out and spend it, I think it'll have a bigger impact.
So we can feel a little optimistic?
I think you can feel a little optimistic, but don't get giddy right now.
Okay.
Save it for a year or 2 years down the road.
On the economy issue, can you talk about the middle class? It was such the buzzword in all of the debates. What is the middle class today with Barack Obama?
In terms of income or ideas?
And in terms of
I think
income,
it's income.
in terms of
well, according to Barack Obama, it's anybody who makes less than $250,000.
Okay.
So
Right.
it's Joe the plumber and a handful of rich people are not the middle class. But it was 95% of working Americans.
Okay.
I think that his enemies attacked him on the stump saying that all Americans, 95% of Americans, but he insisted on saying 95% of working Americans. People who earn a salary are going to get so the middle class has always been defined very broadly in America because most Americans, well, it's strange. This is kind of a sidebar. I think 20% of Americans believe they're in the top 1%, and another 19 think they'll be there within 10 years.
Wow.
Right.
So people don't think they're middle class, but most of them are. And this is why Joe the plumber, went and addressed him and said, "You're going to raise my taxes." And this is why so many people thought that their taxes were going to get raised. With that said, there was a report in AP today that the majority of Americans would be okay with the delay of instituting that tax break. In other words, most Americans are willing to sacrifice for the good of the economy, which is another problem with the Bush administration, is they never really asked us to do anything. And Americans do want to do something.
Well, we were supposed to go out and spend.
Well,
right
we
after
do
9/11,
like to
we
do
were
that.
supposed to go out and
We do like to
shopping,
do that.
which was a nice message. But again, I think the sacrificing
But
piece
he's still
is missing.
saying, despite that AP poll, he is still saying that is his first priority, is to give the middle class a tax cut. And that's to get to do what you said, go out and spend. Because that's what we'll do. We'll spend it on stuff.
Can we spend it on education? Are there going to be breaks for students that want to go to college? Or
There's supposed to be a $4,000 tax cut to somebody coming to college.
It's a tax credit, isn't it?
Tax credit,
Exactly.
exactly
And it's
what it is.
basically, wouldn't that cover the cost of an education here at Montgomery College?
Very good.
Wonderful.
So,
Yeah.
they're
I think we
plugging the
support
college,
that.
and so that's how they won the election in Maryland. Let me just go to the economy and then relate it to education. Look, you can take the campaign promises very seriously, and you'll be disappointed. Because the expectation game is there, because he has a friendly House, more than friendly Senate, and the expectation with all this, what they call political capital, it's expected that Obama will actually make some of these things that are promised come true. However, the economy, as you know, globalization is not just a dream. It's a reality. If people didn't understand it now after this housing sub-mortgage crisis, they understand this is related. The price of oil in China or demand of oil in China has everything to do with our economy. Therefore, it is not a simple solution, and it's not just a tax cut is going to do it. They are looking at IMF as we speak today. They're looking at this week about how to deal with the monetary system. The promises that are made with campaign has to be realistic, and let the policymakers go through it. A bill or a proposal or a promise, campaign promise, will go through metamorphosis before it gets to the desk of the president again. Therefore, I wouldn't talk about this middle class $200,000 or $250,000 or $150,000 or even the healthcare promises of, addressing 50 million people who don't have. So, but in his first conference last Friday, he said, I understand that the economy is front and center, and he likes to do it sooner than later. Lame duck session or no lame duck session, the housing industry is one thing, but the car industry, now what are you going to do with Chrysler? Now the question is that everybody understands that now, and this is why some of these claims of Marxism or Lenin or socialism is going to be prevalent, but the question of the economy, worldwide economy, is on top and front and center. How you deal with how much you spend for education or healthcare has a lot to do with the basis, the tax base, and also the funding.
But our improved image overseas will make it easier for us to deal with our friends. And you're talking about the IMF, and that's one of the areas in which they are more trusting of President-elect Obama than they are of the current
I think one of the major issues is the relationship between European, how much say-so they have, because of course this was after World War II, so Europeans have much more input. Now this is globalized. My whole point was that the monetary system and the regulatory, they're all related, so you can't separate the domestic issues from the foreign issues when it comes to the economy and budgeting. So you can talk about details, what was promised, but I'm just trying to give you a reality check.
Yeah, and that's why American elections matter. You hear a whole group of Americans think that they don't care what people overseas think, but it does matter what people overseas think.
And professors, we have to take a quick break. We'll continue our discussion right after this. Stay tuned. You're watching Campus Conversations.